Hello, guys. Good night, or good afternoon, or whatever. You guys are all over the place. Um, yeah. Hey, guys. Okay, let me start sharing this. Um, so yesterday, I actually plugged the albedo color from the Stan Winston model, and I did some renders actually, just to see how it's gonna turn out. And it's gonna be it's good to see, it's like the skin is starting to work, but obviously this entire color we're gonna be painting next it's gonna be on Monday, because we need a entire lesson just for the color painting part. But this is basically how it looks like right now, with just like with this temporary color from Stan Winston, and then with some of the other detail I start adding to the model. I'm gonna show you the difference here, so we're in the same page. So yesterday when I plugged, that's how the model looked like. And then I did another pass, which is basically today, actually, before it was like in the morning, actually. I did this pass here that was just like, I thought that the eyes could be a little bit more tucked in into the eye sockets, and kind of like they could be a little higher and closer to the eyebrows, so it would add more style to it. So basically that's the difference I did. I actually held the eyes into place, and then I brought everything down, so the eyes are locked, but then everything comes down. And then obviously I start tweaking this area here, making it a little bit wider as well. And also, if you notice here, for example, like the shape of the bags in here, it was a little bit I noticed that if I had an eyeball in there, this would not be conforming to the eyeball as I wanted. So I actually made a little bit more round in here, so it kind of like starts a little bit closer to the bridge of the nose, right? So it looks a little bit more natural as well. So those are the changes I did. And then today, a little bit before the class started, I start adding more stuff. I added like some mid-resolution stuff, and I carved some of those areas. Everything outside of HD, by the way, all this stuff here. So that's the difference between what I have. But then it's all like non-HD, like, so I'm gonna have to go and refine all those wrinkles and get stuff a little sharper, But that's basically what I did from yesterday to today. So it came from this one to this one, basically. So I'm gonna be, keep working on it, obviously, and then eventually get a skin color that matches the character. But yeah, so that's the point I am at right now. In terms of the maps I'm using, they're exactly the ones I used yesterday, other than the albedo. So just to look back here, so that's the way model looks like right now. We're gonna be refining a lot of stuff today. And then, so basically, like the specular I started to paint yesterday to show you, I didn't use it. I'm still using the old one, which is this one here. Right, so that's a visual reference. That's basically the specular map I have right now. And then what I did, I actually changed the UVs, because remember, like I changed a lot of the forms, right? And then I had to adjust my UVs. So I adjusted the UVs. I basically like unfolded everything, and then I moved stuff around to avoid intersections, and then brought the base mesh for each one of those in here, and then re-exported the maps again. So now it conforms better. So basically, like the specular is coming from here, but then the bump height is the one that we painted yesterday. So that's basically the one I'm using for the height of the bump at this point, instead of like the super dark one that we had right there, right? So like, yeah, actually this one instead of that one. But yeah, I'm gonna keep refining them now that I have a base to look at, and I can chip in and just like, start working harder on it, so I can get something that looks better. Let's go back to this material here. And then for the albedo, that's basically like the one I have painted for Stan Winston right there, right? Which looks weird. Looks like he has a little smile now because the forms changed so much. And then you see like there's some stretching going on in there, like all this, the stubble in there, gonna have to redo and all this stuff. But it's cool to just like have an idea about like the placement of the colors we're gonna be talking about next Monday. So I normally keep this area here very, very pale, especially with older people, and then add some greens and darks and browns. Everything's gonna be hand painted next week, like Monday. So yeah, so this is basically like where you're at right now. And then what we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing some refinements and then keep sculpting it. So areas of that I think I'm going to concentrate the most today. It's going to be like on the bridge of the nose. The lips, are going to be doing some sculpting the lips, then refining some of the chin stuff as well. And what I did last night before I went to bed, I actually covered the entire forehead with pores. And then remember when I said like the whole point of keeping things symmetrical is just like so we can actually sculpt the pores symmetrically, right? But then once you have the pores in place, you can go to town with asymmetry. And that's what I started to do here. You see like the eye bags in here, the wrinkles on the sides, they are already asymmetrical. I started to introduce some asymmetry around this wrinkle here, the main one. Some more asymmetry around here in the chin. It doesn't have like a lot of asymmetry in the major forms yet. It's just like more like in the secondary stuff. But then later, obviously, they're gonna have to add more asymmetry, like maybe bring one eye slightly down, or it's like change the expression slightly on one side. Maybe like make the lips a little bit lazy on one side, or whatever I have to do. It's like just to add some more asymmetry in general. But for now, I'm just starting that process. So in terms of the UVs, so we are clear. What I did was this. Just basically like ran the unfold. I selected everything, select the entire UVs. And then I went to modify and then did the unfolding here. And then once one was unfolded, I just like moved stuff around and made sure that those guys are not intersecting with anything. But that's basically what I did in terms of UVs. Nothing fancy at all. Just made sure that I kept like the 5 ones I had, the same scale and everything. And yeah, that's about it. So let's look at some sculpting, because that's the part you're gonna be spending most of the time anyway. And then next week is gonna be pretty packed. This week was already pretty packed for you guys with stuff, but next week's gonna be like albedo on Monday, and then we're gonna jump right into eye shader and then eye sculpting, like the iris stuff. And then at the end of the next week, we're gonna be starting to introduce some X-Gen stuff. So we're gonna cover like eyes, X-Gen, and color next week. So it's a lot of stuff to deal with. And then next week's gonna be the 3rd one. So yeah, we're gonna be pretty advanced by then. And then we're gonna have plenty of time. Like the next week, we're gonna be adding more and more hair, right? Like working the longer hair and stuff like that. But I believe like next week is gonna be mostly like peach fuzz, which is like the simplest thing to do, and some eyelashes. So I'm gonna start like peach fuzz and eyelashes, and then the next the 4th week, then we're gonna do the like eyebrows and the longer hair and all that stuff. So I have plenty coming up. So let's do some work on this guy. Let's just make sure I have my references in here. What I had before. Let's see if I can find it. Oops. Ah. Oh, let's see. Actually, full screen. Okay, let me just minimize you guys here. Okay, so I noticed that we started getting some of the submissions for the reviews this weekend. So that's cool. Basically, like the deadline, I would say 24 hours from now is going to be like 9:38 p.m. on Friday. So that's the time, the local time for me. So I would say like if we consider like you can upload some stuff like in the middle of the night, normally people do that. I would say if you upload stuff like within the next 30, I would say like 36, no, 36 hours is too much. Maybe like next 30 hours, then we are covered. We don't need to worry about. But if you keep track on the time that's going to start, it's going to be like 9 in the morning here in Los Angeles, local time. And I'm actually in San Francisco, but it's the same time zone. And then the next one is going to be at 9 p.m. And the process is going to be, it's kind of like first come, first serve, right? So basically, like you upload your stuff. If you are online, I'm going to be logging in. And then if you are online, I'm going to be calling your name. Basically, we're going to start like doing the review for your work. And if you're not online, then I'm assuming you're coming like at night. And if you're not coming at night, even though you're not there, if your work is in the folder, I'm still going to review it. and then everything's going to be recorded, so we can watch my review later, you know, even if you're not present. But I'm going to try to review live with the people who are present in the morning first, and then whoever was left is going to be reviewed at night. It's like independently of if you're online or not at that time. I'm going to be reviewing everyone else. So let me just check my reference here. I'm going to be sculpting some, let's start with some lips. One thing that I have to be careful, right? Like is the thing that I mentioned yesterday. I cannot go too crazy with the wrinkles because I don't want to make this guy look like a very old man, right? If he is around like, let's say like his 50s with the beat up skin from the sun, that's kind of like ideal for me. Maybe like very early 60s, you know, but not past that. I don't want to go like a super old guy. So let's start the process by hiding things again. So just keep the mask visible. So let's click, let's make sure I have my polygroups. No, because I am imported everything. I'm gonna have to recreate my polygroups. I'm gonna go to polygroups, auto groups with UV. Let it do its thing. It goes faster if you go to the lowest res before you do that, but it's okay. So I'm gonna click this one, Control Shift, and then click. Control Shift, Control Shift, dun, 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 and those guys. And that's about it. So that's all I need. And then I'm gonna turn off perspective. And I'm gonna just use this area. And I'm gonna remove the neck as well for now. That's just the mask I normally sculpt on. So let's go to the side, press A around here in the nose. Let's go HD. All right, so like I said yesterday, well, not yesterday, a few minutes ago, I covered the entire forehead with pores, and you can tell like they're very boring, and it's basically like the same kind of scale of everything else, right? But we're gonna have to do some passes to make things more interesting in there. You notice that I didn't cover this area here with pores at all, because this is the part it starts to get a little bit more flashy, just like the eyelids in here in the eye bags. We're not gonna get like lots of visible pores in here. We're gonna get some stuff, but it's mostly like you know, texture in there than anything else. And then the pores around the forehead, around this area here, they kind of look like that. But then around here, they start getting like a little bit thinner, and you get like some vertical lines and stuff. This is also the bigger forms that I sculpted before HD, like I said before. So we're gonna have to refine them, right? And make sure that they are reading like they're actually compressed against each other. Maybe use a little bit of inflate, or be very careful with the way I sculpt with clay buildup. But yeah, we're gonna be sculpting this area around here as well in the nose. You get some very tiny micro wrinkles in there, and the lips. So let's start with the lips first. And the lips, I want to get the kind of like an impression that it's a little dry, right? So one thing I can do here, I can just go to Shift D, press a couple of times, just go to my lowest resolution, and then I can select one of those, like move, scale, or rotate. I'm gonna click Control, make sure I'm symmetrical. Control here, I'm gonna click and drag up. And now I'm gonna make a mask like that. It's gonna isolate just one of the lips, right? So with that mask in mind, I can just go to visibility and just say hide, right? Hide points. And now I have just the bottom part I can work on. I can tell that there's a little bit of, you know, it's like that's basically when I was sculpting with two lips, basically like connected to each other, right? Like they're touching each other. So I can actually remove some of that and then reintroduce it later. But yeah, let's do this now. So let's keep it symmetrical for now. I'm just gonna go with my smooth brush here. Just gonna smooth that out. And then for the lips themselves, we're gonna have to turn off symmetry because we wanna make sure that we are doing, you know, making more interesting shapes in here without it. So let's see. Okay, let's switch to my clay buildup. Intensity 2. Just gonna build symmetrically, just a little bit of the forms in here, just get a little bit more of a pressure right in the middle. Oops, too strong my smooth. Let's go back to 10 for the smooth. Just blocking a little bit like that. And then let's switch to the highest resolution again. So D, press a bunch of times. And now I'm gonna have to actually make sure that I'm blending those areas very nicely. I'm looking at the reference on the side is that older guy from that website that has all the super high res stuff. And I'm gonna switch to my little carve tool. And I'm gonna start with, some of them are gonna be a little bit on the shallow side of things, just so I can mark some of those areas. And then I'm gonna go to town with the rest of it. So I'm gonna start marking some diagonals here. So instead of like going very vertically like that, around here, I start like vertical around here in the middle, and then it goes more and more angle towards the sides. So when I get around here, I'm probably gonna get like an angle that goes around there. So let's keep intensity a little bit lower for now. I just wanna really mark some areas here, just to define those directions first. And then when I get around here, you're gonna start getting more straight, but from time to time you get some different directions as well. So it's not like all parallel, right? Which is, it becomes very boring when you have everything very parallel. So let's do this. I'm gonna be modulating with my pressure, right? So I'm gonna start like some of those lines like very deep. And then around the end, I just like gonna start like lifting the pressure a little bit. And again, like, you know, it's like some of those lines going slightly in different angles. And then when I get more towards the sides, then really angle towards the other part like that. So we're gonna do a couple more here. Let's do a little deeper. Let's see. Deeper like that. Then some of them maybe cutting from here slightly. And then I'm gonna really angle around here. We're gonna carefully sculpt like the transition between those parts, but for now we're just gonna introduce some of this direction here so we can actually know where we're going with it. Just to smooth it out a little bit. So now we have some of the shapes in there. Very simple. Let's get some going towards here and there. And now let's start introducing some of the volumes, like the main volumes, and then we're gonna start carving those things into more detail. So I'm gonna use my clay buildup with a little alpha assigned to it, like 36 or whatever number that is, not the 39. I need something a little bit more broad than that. And then in between those forms, I'm gonna start building things up. I'm gonna start with this guy here. So now that I have like those little lines defined, I can really build up the in-betweens. And then obviously later we can actually do another pass, right? Come back and then dig them slightly deeper. And then eventually you get something that looks cool. So I'm building like a little bit of that, like a double kind of thing, right? Like I build a little bit in the bottom right here and then the top. You can break up that one in two, for example. But always making sure that it doesn't look too parallel, right? Like everything has to look a little bit more angled. Bottom here. as everything with when it comes to sculpture, right? It's basically like you build things in steps, like you block the major stuff, direction, and then you build up the forms into more complex forms. So it always starts very simple, and the complexity comes as we go. You could even use the clay buildup, especially like close to those little edges in here, those little lines, because you can actually blend with them, right? So you can actually use the buildup as you blend with them. But obviously you're gonna be using like some smaller lines as well that's gonna help with the blending. So not too much to worry about it for now. And then now we have like some of those little pillows established in there. So we're gonna pick a couple of them and we make them stronger, right? Either by building up more, or by carving deeper. So I'm gonna carve some of those guys here deeper. So I'm looking at some reference right there. I'm gonna try to avoid getting too many wrinkles around this area here, closer to the lips, right? Like the lips touching each other, because then that's the part that's gonna start getting smooth, you know, like you can touch with your tongue, right? You can feel like it's smooth starting there. We're gonna be more concerned about this area that's exposed to the sun. That's basically where the part's gonna get more dry, right? So let's break some of those guys up. Let's start by adding some lines in different directions. So let's try maybe like a little bit more intensity, 10. And then I'm gonna start introducing some lines going in different directions here. So I'm gonna bring some around here. And eventually they're gonna generate some kind of like crisscross effect. And then around here, even like around here, some of them, because it's like kind of chapped, you can actually bring some starting from the middle like that. And then some we're gonna start changing direction. Let's get some guys a little deeper, like that. And then some of them bigger as well. Break up slightly. Around this area here, you can actually, you know, introduce some more micro wrinkles, running slightly in a different direction. Just add some kind of like a little bit more random. And then this guy's gonna start blending with my pores. Smooth it out a little bit around there. So I can cut across the pores in here. Make sure that things are actually having some kind of transition in there. Deeper. As I change the direction here, I can actually build up right in between things. Let's just switch back here. Let's carve a couple of them very deep. So if I use Shift D just to go back in resolution a few times, I can introduce some bigger forms in here. I just don't want to compete with the tertiary stuff, so I'm gonna use more like in the secondary. So like something much bigger like that. Let's try some around here. Maybe slightly changing direction. especially right here in the middle. So make sure that this one here is not too perfect, right? Like it cannot be too straight. And just break it up. Let's pick another one here for hero. Maybe something around here. Oops. And then around here, maybe we can, let's see, there's a form in there. It's kind of interesting. It breaks up like this and then creates a little bit of a line coming down this way. So that can be interesting if we build up this one to become kind of like a bubble in there. That's probably gonna look cool. Let's take this one a little bit. It's almost like there's a little brain texture in there, like I mentioned yesterday. So let's build this one up. This one down first. Bring this one up. And then build this entire thing here to look more organic. Maybe broken on the side in there. This one as well, just to make sure that we are picking like the change of direction. So I'm gonna build this and I'm gonna pick those ones in between too. And then as I go closer to the connection point in there between the two lips, then I'm gonna start going easy with the pressure, so we don't get a lot in there. Just like, you know, trying to introduce more and more complexity and making sure that those things read as a soft surface. It's like a little button there. All right there. Then we're going to introduce some more of the smaller stuff. And you can even use a little bit of maybe our little random brush, but very, very softly. We can try that. It's starting to look a little bit softer. That's what we want, something that looks organic. The best brush by far to me, like to create like an organic feel, is the clay build up combined with a little alpha, like a round alpha like this one, because it's just like, you know, it's like as we, you know, it's like as I sculpt around a wrinkle like that, you can tell that the forms that they respect each other's, right? Like, so it's like if there is a little edge like that and you build on the side of it, it kind of like it ends in there, right? Like it keeps very controlled and it creates some kind of like a compression in between those forms. It's almost like you don't even need like a pinch brush or something like that, you know, it creates like naturally that little pinch in the middle as long as you're sculpting two forms side by side. So that's starting to look a little bit more interesting now. So let's introduce some smaller forms as well. For the bigger forms, I think we got a lot in there, but we definitely need like some smaller stuff as well. Everything is about hierarchy, right? Like you're gonna have to build stuff like bigger forms and then smaller, but not necessarily, like I said before, in a certain order. I mean, like it's good if you can build from bigger forms to smaller, but you see what I'm doing here, right? Like I'm building some of the smaller stuff first just to mark where I want it, and then just going to a lower resolution and just building the major forms. You know, that's the advantage of using the CG, right, as a media. I mean, like you can go back and forth in subdivision levels and completely ignore this notion that you know, some people have that it has to be like traditional sculpting. It's not true. I mean, like Obviously, in terms of the importance of the primary forms, the secondary is exactly the same. But the order you build them, you have much more flexibility than a traditional sculpture. So yeah, traditional sculpture, there's no way to go back, right? If you messed up the primary surface, the primary forms, how you fix it, right? There's no way. You just like build from that point up. So it's like you have to follow a predetermined order, right? But with CG, man, like ZBrush, right, or any software that supports like multi-resolution as you sculpt, you can use that as a reference, but you don't need to be locked to that. You have a lot of flexibility. So that's basically what I do. You know, it's like I'm gonna show you how I sculpt some of the wrinkles around the bridge of the nose. And the approach is like this. Sometimes I start with the pores themselves, and then I connect the dots to create the wrinkles, like I mentioned before. But then sometimes I just go and I sculpt the wrinkles themselves, and then I go with the pores, and I sculpt and I put the pores like across that little line, just so it looks like they are actually creating the line, but it's actually the line that's coming first. So I do things like very freely, you know. It's like sometimes I start in a certain way, but sometimes I just do it completely different way. Even in those videos, you're gonna see sometimes I start from a sphere, and then sometimes from like a blocking from a base mesh or whatever, you know. Anything that that looks good for me in the day, you know, because at the end of the day, it's just like starting from a base mesh is just that the first hump, right? It's just like you have to cross that, but then there is a lot of work involved in the next step. So I really don't care how I start the base mesh. I just want to get over that hump so I can actually start having fun, you know. But definitely like starting from a sphere is my favorite because you avoid contamination, right, from forms from some previous model. But yeah, this one here, we started from that faceted model. It's like, it worked fine, but maybe we're gonna do a sphere again next time. Let's get some more of those horizontal ones as well. So, and then when I get around here, I can actually start changing direction as well. So we're gonna get some of them a little bit more crossed like that. Oh man, you just should have crossed them all again. And then I'm gonna actually introduce some of them right at that division. So around here, same thing. I'm gonna cross them a little bit. Create something like looks more like that. And then some coming from the other direction. Again, like everything is very idealized, right? Using some reference as a guide, but just like freely just sculpting those things. Some of them changing down there. And even like in between those guys, I can build up a little bit, just create some kind of like a thin kind of surface impression. Yeah, there is a lot of room for sculpting all kinds of things in here, as you can tell. I mean, as you start blending with those pores, you have like so much stuff you can do with it. You can come up with lots of wrinkles from different directions, just like how far you really want to push it. So now that we have this one, let's introduce some of the kind of like a little bit more random stuff, but without going overboard with it. So I'm gonna use the skin random one, the one, remember, like that one that I just do the texturing like that, right? But I'm gonna try to do in a way that's not too overwhelming. So let's maybe try like a 7 for intensity, make it a little bit bigger. Let's see how much I can get, just to get some interest in there. And it's slightly like a semi in circles, right? Kind of like I'm going in circles, but not too crazy, just like picking some spots and going in circles in those spots, but without going too crazy, like in perfect circles, you know. So so now we got a little bit of that. And now that we have some of those guys, we can use some of them as guides again, and then exaggerate some of them. So for example, like if I got something that looks like this, you could just like reinforce it. Actually, let's get a little thinner, smaller. Get some of those guys we just got from that texture and just exaggerate them. And I can keep going like thinner and thinner with everything. And then you stop when you're, you know, when you feel like, okay, yeah, I think I did enough. But sometimes it's hard to stop. Sometimes you want to keep going with it. It's like so tempting, right? You have all this resolution in there. But obviously, all the resolution is not a lot of help if the base mesh doesn't work. You know, that's why I keep going back to my model and changing proportions and experimenting with the style and stuff, because I know that this is all fluff, all the detail. Definitely is going to sell the idea that there's a cool skin in there and everything, but if the base forms are not good or not solid, yeah, things are going to fall apart. It's going to I definitely don't want that at the end. Yeah, this lips, for example, I think for a first pass, I think we can kind of like, you know, it's like consider this one on its way, and then we can actually move to some other area and then come and revisit it. And what I'm doing here, you saw like I did like the rough pass, and now I'm coming like with a much thinner brush and really refining the forms, right? Like it goes like from rough to something a little bit more refined. Just picking some of those areas and carving a little bit more elegantly. And then your patience is going to be the limit. Like until you're pissed, it's like, oh man, I'm going to spend another 3 hours doing this now. Like, no, I have some other areas to work on. So yeah, I think that just like, you know, for a first pass, when we actually render, the render is already going to start picking up some of this stuff. And that's basically what we want. Like, okay, if the render picks it up, then we're going to be able to evaluate, for example, how those shapes are, if they are like too deep or not deep enough. You can actually soften things or just increase the depth. And at least like we're going to have an idea. So that's important to just like, at least like touch some of the surface and then let the render show you guys what's missing, you know. And but it's important that actually the surface is completely touched. Even like this little micro wrinkles I just added in there, during the render, you're going to be able to evaluate and see like, okay, well, I could have gone a little bit deeper with them. They look a little too soft. Or the opposite. You can just say like, okay, I think I don't need all of them. I can actually use less of that. And then you can just come back and smooth things out. There's an interesting thing in this guy here, which is the scar. Look at this interesting scar right here. This thing. Isn't that awesome? You can see like it's kind of yellowish in there. And you really kind of like, it's overriding all the pores, right? It's like, it's just like, it's a big scar. That's kind of cool, you know, it's like little elements like that you can actually add to the model. Yeah, so let's consider this one here okay for now. And then let's switch back to some other area. So now we have some lips in there. But let's switch to this area here that needs some work. And then we can go back to the top lips, to the upper lips. It's going to be the similar approach. So we're going to be more pruny, that part. But I think it's cool if we work in some other areas for now. Let's just move my reference in here up. And let's take a look at this area around here. So there are a couple of ways to approach this. For example, you see like this, this wrinkle in here is a little bit too spread out, right? Because I was sculpting in a low resolution. So I want to make sure that I have that wrinkle kind of compressed. And I'm going to use a inflate brush, but the inflate brush is a very delicate one. Let's see, where is my inflate? Right here. The thing is, like when I use the inflate brush, by default it's like 10, and I normally turn it down all the way to 1 or 2. And I still have to be very careful. What happens is this, for example, if I have 10 here, and I just go to town and inflate it, right? And it's like, just do this, right? Oh, it looks cool. It's all compressed in there. You close the gap. That's what I want. But then you go behind it, and you look what you did, and there you are. So like there's a intersection in there. And then this is the kind of problem, you know, it's like when you export your displacement maps, you're gonna get those whitish areas in there. It can create like some nasty artifacts, you know, especially if later on you're gonna be playing with this model and you're smoothing some stuff, you know, it's like maybe you still have the same displacement being used, and all of a sudden it's gonna look like, you know, there's definitely an artifact in there. So instead of like using 10 as the default, I'm gonna start with 2. And I'm gonna be very careful here, closing this thing. So I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna keep checking constantly the back side of things. So make sure you have your double side, right? Like at the last tab in here, you're gonna go, not the last, but the one of the fifth from last. So you're gonna have like your double in there. So make sure you have this one on. By default, ZBrush doesn't turn it on, so then you cannot see anything, right? But if you turn on, then you can see the backside. So, and then we're gonna keep like, basically like pinching it with inflate. I'm gonna do the same around this area here. I'm gonna inflate a little bit. And then now I'm gonna go to the back, and I'm gonna make sure that everything looks good. So let's see, from here, it looks pretty good. There's a tiny little part in here, probably around here. You can use a little bit of a smooth, right? So I can just put my smooth at the very low intensity, smooth it out. But now I can see that there is no penetration happening. So it's kind of like a nice line. What I can do as well, I can use my little curve or the brush, and I can actually sculpt this. So for example, like from the reverse, right? So I can create a little bit more of a pinch inside by sculpting it from the reverse. So like if I do this, since I'm sculpting, I'm not pinching anything, I know that's not gonna have any intersections in there, right? And then when I go to the other side, let's actually do this for this one here as well. A little bit sharper, maybe this one as well. And this guy here. Let's see from the other side. Now it looks like a nicer set of lines, right? Like it's a little bit sharper overall. Now I can actually go to my higher res, and let's see how this all looks like. It's starting to look a little bit more natural now. Now we can actually use the technique, right, and connect some dots in there. So you can actually get some of this stuff to look more natural. So if I look at the reference in there, what his skin is doing is actually some of those lines are migrating from side to side. So basically here, this is a little big. Let me just reduce it to something like 12. So from here, actually going to start migrating to the side. So we're going to add some of those lines connecting from side to side around here. I can actually extend some of them, go a little bit larger. And then back in here, some in there. And then again, I'm gonna cut across. But this guy here, I can break it up like in multiple places as well. So like you can really go to town if you want. So instead of like having this long line, I'm just gonna break it up. Connect some of those guys. So then from the distance, you're going to start seeing, you know, things getting a little bit more interesting. And then obviously you can pick like those individual pores like this, and you can actually carve on top of them to add some of that directionality. So it looks like it ends, for example, like the wrinkle ends right here, but then the direction keeps going on top of the pore, right? So you pick like a few pores like this, and you can just like introduce some direction to them just by carving on top of them, like a slight line like that. Same for those guys here. You can just add some direction. So let's do it from the opposite way, like this. So they're not like perfectly round anymore. And then now this area here is an interesting one because in his case here, in the reference, I'm not seeing that much, but you see this a lot, you know, it's like you get some very interesting micro wrinkles around here. So they start kind of big coming from the side, right? So sometimes you get like something that starts right there. And then you're gonna start like actually changing direction. And then when you get around here, they're going to start actually being traced in parallel. So they're going to be very thin. Oh, actually, I'm using the positive now. I just switched to negative here. So I'm going to get very thin and a little long. And I'm going to do like multiple of those. And then with the pores, we're going to start actually introducing some blending between everything. Again, like I started very parallel in there, so now I'm introducing some diagonals in there as well. Just like tiny little wrinkles. And then those ones, obviously from the side, they're gonna start like mixing with the rest. Let's continue here. And then gonna start fading away around here. Kind of like start one, break it up, you know, it's like cut it right in the middle, do a little bit of a diagonal. Anything you can do to look like it has a little bit more of a variation. So something like this, just like right at the bridge. And then we're gonna start building up like the bigger forms as well. But first, let's just finish this little lines here. It's interesting because when the light hits this area here and you have this type of tiny lines, it really shows, you know, it's like, it's kind of like, okay, it's almost like your eye, if you think about it, you're not even noticing what's going on, but it's almost like your eye is kind of so used to seeing like different types of skin that when the eye locks into an area like this, for example, it kind of sells it because it looks different from the rest, you know. It's like, it's something like, okay, I can tell that, I can see that area, because it's kind of like it has a thin kind of skin in there and it's very flexible, that you might actually have like those tiny micro wrinkles. So now we have those guys in there in place. Let's add some pores on top of it. And then for the pores, I'm not going to go too crazy with depth. I can do a little bit less deep. So like I have 40, let's start with a 34. And then, like I said before, I started with those guys. So instead of like creating the pores first, I'm going to be creating the pores last. So I'm going to just pick like a few of those guys, and I'm going to introduce like some of them. Make sure that I actually have some good size as well. It cannot be too different in size from the rest in there. So Let's just get some of that bigger and then get a bit smaller in here. I'm gonna put some in-betweens as well. And then another thing we're going to be doing, we're going to use the directional brush, the one that the random one, and I'm going to be introducing even more micro breakups in the middle. Just going to complete this area here. Trying to get some of them right in the wrinkles in there, so you get that impression that actually it's being created that way. It's the kind of stuff, right? Like, oh my God, this is so unnecessary, but it's fun. Yeah, again, like it's totally up to you guys. You know, it's like how we're gonna approach the surface. If you're gonna do this kind of detail, like around this area, for example, or if you're gonna simplify it more, you know, it's like at the end of the day, like I said, like if you look at scan data and realistic renders done with scan data, you don't get this level of detail. You know, it's like it's much simpler than that, and you still get realistic renders. So at the end of the day, that's not what matters. You know, it's like what matters is like proportion is important. The color of the albedo is going to be important. Level of specular and all that stuff, but the amount of like super detailed and stuff like that, I don't think like it's going to really define if the model is going to be realistic or not. You know, but I sure like to use like my time to introduce those details, because it's just because I like doing them. You know, I like seeing them when they render, like in close-ups, that you can actually see all this tiny little details and stuff. It's kind of like it's my own thing, you know. But yeah, totally up to you guys if you want to push it or do a simplified version of it, you know. So now, I mean, like obviously everything you're going to be doing here is going to be just repetition, right? So I'm not going to be torturing you guys doing the entire thing, right? Because that consumes many precious minutes. So I did a little bit just to show you the approach in here. And then I'm going to show you another one that's the base, like we starting like to cover that area, right? So we get the micro wrinkles in there plus the pores. But then we're going to do another pass that's the with the skin random, that same brush that we always use. And then we can use them in a direction as well here. So basically like introduce a little bit more irregularity. I'm just going to bring it here. And then when I start going more towards the rest of the nose, I'm going to start introducing more of that circular motion because I want to get that breakup. So I'm going to just do this and actually exaggerate a little bit more in here. I can switch to symmetric in here. Just going to go in circles. And then again, I'm going to go in line in here. So directional. And then start getting more and more circles. Symmetry off in the middle. And then as we stand right now, we don't have a lot of, for example, like we don't have like nice pimples or anything, right? The skin looks very clean. We can start introducing some pimples as well. The best way is to actually look at scans, you know, it's like, look at some scans, you're gonna see like the skin is never perfect like that. There's nothing like this, you know, it's like this leathery, perfectly smooth surface in there. You're always gonna get like some bumpiness and stuff. So what we can do, let's pick one of them here. Let's see, the intros. I have one here, pimple elastic. Let's see if that's the one we used before. Yeah, that's a good one. So actually, I can introduce some of those guys around. Let's see, there. I already introduced some of them in that corner of the eye, right around here. Let's do some bigger ones in here. Can actually introduce some in there before I forget. little bit more intensity. The cool thing, like I mentioned before, is that Arnold is going to really, you know, like do a good job with those little things and going to render like almost like little bubbles. You can tell, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to see here, but like in this one here, for example, with the Rick Baker portrait, right? Right there, you see like they look translucid. Just that Arnold has this very subtle way of like creating the subsurface scattering. So if you have like bumps and stuff, it really scatters to look like translucent little bubbles, you know? So that's gonna be cool. Anything you can do in that way really helps. Let's see where I am with my reference now. Switched it, this guy here. Okay. So let's go back to this area. I can still do some work. I'm kind of like going all over the place because I'm seeing things here that are bothering me. So I'm gonna go, you know, do some more pores work around here just to connect a little bit those areas. Because I'm gonna start fading into wrinkles, but I still see a little room in there. So I'm gonna just add more stuff. Add more shit to it. Those are like words from a very famous director. They're building those assets, and they are looking a little bit simple for what he wanted, and so add more shit to it. And then we just do it. Okay, so pimple elastic. Let's get some of those. You can actually use the negative, right? So if I'm building like pimples like that, I can actually use the negative so it can generate some kind of scarring, right? Not necessarily, but you know what I mean. Yeah, and you should have a ton of stuff in the skin, you know. It's like it's just we're just like in the beginning of this, but eventually we're gonna get a ton of, you know, micro scars and little bruises and things like that. But yeah, just get some mosquito bites in there, especially around this area. There. And then let's switch back here to what is about to do. Oh, I was about to do some more carving around this area here. So basically, we're going to be introducing some more detail around here. So basically, like those folds, they can get very deep sometimes. Oops. So I'm going to carve it starting here and start to fade. So start like very deep and then start fading. Then trying to mix with the rest. And then in between, we're definitely going to do a little build up, because you want to make sure that we get that nice little organic feel to it. Then around here, you're going to start doing the opposite. So I'm going to come from the wrinkles themselves, the pores themselves, and I'm going to blend towards this area. And then this area here can get very nasty sometimes. But again, like, you know, it's like how far are we going to push, right? Because unless I want to go with this super old guy again, and I really don't. Uh-oh, ZBrush is going to shoot across. Just did. Ah, I love that. Oh. Another thing that ZBrush bugs is that sometimes when you do that by mistake, when you go back to sculpting, it like the first time you touch the model again, after a little bug like that, it just goes like crazy with the intensity and then creates this super, you know, intense little lines. So you kind of like have to just touch it and let it go, and then you start sculpting again, and then all of a sudden it works. Over the years, right, like working with ZBrush, you have to get familiar with all those ins and outs of you know, the bugs and everything. But you know, like kind of like learn how to deal with them and then keep going, hoping that things are going to be fixed, and eventually they are fixed Some stuff is lingering for years though, but for the most part, like there's a lot of cool fixes. Okay, so you guys have any questions about this? I mean, like we were just sculpting, but feel free. And another thing, I mean, like if you've seen anything in my previous models or something you're curious about, or it's like I know that Roger had a question about the clothing the other day. I really don't mind as long as it doesn't derail too much, like the current class. Opening all those files, and clearing up any questions you guys might have. So don't be shy about that. If you need to know anything, now it's the time,
Chris, if you're, let's say, if you save your model while you're in HD, and then let's say I save it, right? You save it right now.
Yeah.
And then you crash, and then you open again. Is it gonna be in HD?
Yeah.
It starts in HD?
Yeah, it starts in HD.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting though is that I don't know if it's still true, but in the past, for example, if you saved something with a subdivision level, for example, right? Like you would save your model at subdivision level 5, then the file would have a size. But then if you
I heard that.
Yeah, if you save the same model again, but subdivision level 0, then it's much smaller.
Is it true?
Yeah, at least in the past, that's the way it was always, But in this case here, let's do a test. I mean, like what we can do with it, we can actually save this one as it is right now. So let's do a save as, and then we can save both. Since I have to save, that's a good test right here. So UV is 33. Actually, going to put HD in the name. Make sure we can track it. So let's see that. It's going to take a little bit because the resolution, but shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, I was just like, making pores, and then you're like, I don't want to see the whole thing before I get out of it. And then I was just wondering if it actually was possible to save it. And
oh yeah, you can.
I'd be like, yeah, no, that sucks, and then you just have to redo it.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm curious actually to see the size difference, if it's gonna have any, because I know that with the regular subdivision levels, it normally creates this difference in size. But let's see. Let's from here, let's just get out of it. It's a good test to do. And then let's do another save here with this one. Actually, let's go all the way down, something like this. Let's see how it compares. So that one saved with 1.2 gigs. So let's see this one. When it comes to HD, it might be a little different the way it saves, because like I said, I think the way it works is kind of like saves into those virtual maps, high resolution maps. I think that's kind of the way it works. So if that's the case, the map should still be pretty big, right? It's like it shouldn't change the size, I guess. But we can test now. But when it's actually actual geometry subdivision, then oh, Thiago Hayes raised his hand. I never seen this before. That's cool. So okay, Thiago is next in line. So let's see, open, and we have two files. Look at that. So it's the same file. One has 1.2 gigs, and the other one has 899.
That's crazy,
right? And it's the same file with all the same information. So let's open the HD. Let's see how it turns out. $71 million. Let's crank it. All right. How are you guys models going? Like you guys having some good progress in there?
The pores are really challenging, man.
They are, right?
I feel like, until you kind of get to a ballpark that I think it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Size
wise?
Yes, the problem is this distance between them. I think that's the hardest.
Oh thing. Yes, definitely, man.
Right, and it's like I don't. Maybe it's a constancy or something. Once you see, you're just like, I just did way too close for a while, and then you're like, yep, yeah, you did.
Yeah, but sometimes you know what I do here. For example, let's switch back here to my intensity of 40. So you see, like some of them here in this area here, they're a little bit more spread out. So in some areas, I noticed that they're a little bit more spread out. So what I did, I went like and I added some in betweens. So you can do that as well. So you can go and just add some in betweens. I'm adding some right now, right here. Look, so like you just incorporate some of them to break up further that area. But there is always a way you can actually do something, unless it's like really far apart. You know, it's like something that if it's far apart and you didn't, for example, like if I do something like this, right here in the lip, and the next one is around here. This is one thing. But if you do something that's much smaller, for example, a tiny little dot like that, and then here, that's a totally different thing, right?
Yeah.
You need
those legs, the little legs of the
yeah. You need them. You need them to kind of connect, right, and create a little network.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's the tricky part for sure.
I know.
Yeah, but once you get it, like
I feel like it's a practice thing. Like
it is. Definitely it is. Because I mean, like in the, I think it was in the what was that, like June or July class, I had a hard time. I had to redo my pores like 3 times because I was not nailing like the distance, and this one kind of went straight away, and I kind of like liked the distance. So it comes with like testing it and doing multiple times, I guess.
Is July the one you did your wife?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is a lot of difference, but they seem like a lot shallower. Is that
the pores? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they are like more delicate, right?
So did you just do them with a smaller intensity, or in the end you just like morph them with like a low brush or something?
I think it was a smaller intensity actually. I never rewatched me during those videos. But if I rewatch, I can actually check like the intensity if I'm using the same. But the shape of the pore is definitely the same. It's probably like just the intensity is smaller.
Yeah,
it's like a cleaner kind of thing. But
cool.
Yeah. So Thiago, sorry man, you're hanging in there. You have a question?
Yes, I do. I'd like to know. Maybe it's just because you're used to that render. What like to know is why do you use Arnold instead of V-Ray, for example, if there is any specific reason?
Yeah, I mean, like I used to do everything with V-Ray in the past, right? And then the thing that it's like, as with every one of us, when we looked at some kind of demo, right? Like we see someone like posting cool shit, the first thing you go like, oh my god, should I switch to Blender? Because like, look at all this stuff that's being done in Blender now. I want to switch, right? So I'm a flip-flopper. So well, I was actually like, it was back in the day when some people were posting some very realistic renders at CG Feedback. And I was noticing that stuff. And it was like, most of the tasks were done in Arnold, And I was like, man, the quality of the skin is so good. There was a whole thread about skin. And the best results I saw in there were like all Arnold renders. And then I saw some V-Ray stuff as well. And then some users using V-Ray start switching to Arnold. And then I tried that, It's like, and the first thing that I noticed when I switched to Arnold, and bear in mind that this was a couple of years ago, was that the results in Arnold were much more predictable to me. In V-Ray, I had like lots of happy accidents. So I would like tweak a slider in there and I would get the result. And I was like, that's not exactly what I expected by tweaking this slider. And with Arnold, like, it's spot on, man. If I add something, I know what type of result I'm going to get. Everything is very simple, kind of like easy to find. But obviously, like, all those guys, they play catch up with each other, right? So I know that V-Ray, for example, introduced the same shader, very similar shader that was the all shader that originated the current shader for Arnold. That was programmed by this guy from Weta, actually. And So now it's like the V-Ray has a very similar shader from Arnold, for example. And then V-Ray started with the real-time render stuff, and then Arnold played catch up and started now to introduce that, and just like in beta right now, but soon is gonna be like full on. So it's like it's like at the moment, I thought when I switched was like the best stuff I was seeing was Arnold, and I stuck with it, and I still love it. It's like even though I see some very awesome stuff done in V-Ray these days, I still love how simple and predictable Arnold is, and the fact that it comes with Maya, right? So I don't need to pay an extra license or anything like that. Just like you pay for like your monthly payment for Maya, and then you get Arnold with it. I was like, that's perfect. So that's the answer. But
Okay.
I really like the quality of the skin. It's like it's such a simple shader, and without having like a multi-layer kind of thing, the result is already very good from the from the get-go. So yeah.
I also have two other questions.
Uh-huh.
If you get to a point, like for example, you have that amount of details in your mesh,
Mm-hmm.
you'd like to redo your pores, for example, how would you do that?
Oh yeah, that's a tricky one, right? Because at this point I already went outside and came back to HD a couple of times. So basically, like my morph target doesn't work anymore, right? That's something you have to plan. Like if you're starting your pores and you're just starting to get like an idea about how certain area is going to look like as a benchmark for the rest of it, right? Then you can use the blend, the morph target, the morph brush. But in this case here, at this point, if I need to eliminate anything, I have to resculpt. That's basically what I'm gonna have to do. It's a very kind of like it's almost like a traditional approach, right? Once you go to HD, you're kind of like stuck into playing with the actual like digital clay. So if you added all those stamps and everything, and then all of a sudden you have to eliminate some of the stuff and resculpt like because the distance between the pores it should be bigger or something, you're definitely going to have to smooth it out and then sculpt it again. That's the downside of it.
All right. And also, why did you use inflate instead of pinching when you were sculpting the eyebrow?
Oh, I like the fact that when you use the inflate, I use for everything when it comes like to wrinkles like this. Very, very little intensity as usual, because I like the way that instead of like pinching and just leaving the forms completely deflated around them, it pinches as it inflates the areas around it. So basically, like, it creates this compression, when you treat like a giant like wrinkles like that, like a common mistake is to actually just like carve almost like a scratch to define the wrinkle, instead of thinking about that as being like a bigger forms that just colliding. It's just like this major fold that's being created in there. So when I use the inflate, I get the both results at the same time. I get the pinching in the middle, and I get the inflation on the side, and then that helps like to add this organic feel to it. That's the only reason.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Someone was, I noticed like it's hard for me to see. I just saw like there's a little pop-up that says like someone is raising their hand. I kind of miss who that was. But,
oh, it was me. If someone do the same, you just have to press participants.
Oh, cool.
There is raise your hand over there.
Oh, that's pretty cool, man. Oh yeah, I see the little hand in there.
Yeah.
Oh, you see like Dimitri actually has a hand up. Yeah, you have a question, Dimitri? Let's see.
Hello, Chris.
Hi.
Are you using morph target now?
Morph target now?
Yes.
No, not at this point. Maybe I should. Yeah, a good idea would be to actually use a morph target every time you enter HD geometry. So at least if you make a big mistake during that session, you can actually revert back, right? I already did the whole lips area without that, but I think it's a good idea, it's like to just use that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, I kind of like I don't know. It's like it's a fine line between being like careless and exploring things and being completely stupid. And I think I write that fine line in there, being completely stupid, not saving too often, and kind of like taking risks of, you know, it's like, oh, what if this doesn't work? It was like, oh, well, I just resculpted, you know. But yeah, I just enjoy the process, man. It kind of like, and I feel a little bit closer to traditional in a way, because, you know, it's like if something goes wrong, I basically like, okay, what are you gonna do? If it was traditional, I would just resculpt, and that's kind of like the way I approach it at the end, which is not maybe the smartest way.
Hi, Chris.
Hey.
Hi. In your ROI model that you did you have lots of wrinkles?
Yes.
Did you sketch them all first and then you use the clay builder to?
Yeah, I think it was done like some time ago, right? Like I think I started that model was like maybe like 2010. I don't know. It's a long time ago. And then I think what I did, I started with very like light scratches. So let's just scratching the surface and defining the, you know, the flow of them, and then going in between the same way I did here with the clay build up, and just like really building up those forms to create this little kind of brain kind of surface. But definitely using a lot of the reference from the painting, you know, because it's so clear in there the way that he did it. But yeah, definitely like I never start with like a super deep cuts like straight away. I kind of like just do a little sketching first. I rarely use masking for anything, but that's another way to do it. You know, it's like for example, if you want to sculpt like scales or things like that, you know, sometimes you start with a little thin mask just to define and then block things out. That can be a good one too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And then here, I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just reverse this whole thing. I'm gonna sculpt the top lips since we are here. So let's see how we approach that one, because not the shape, but let's turn on my symmetry on, and then let's bring. So if I want to select the top, right, I'm gonna just click Control, click in any place right here, the top lip, and then drag it down until we switch to that. So now I have selected the top, right? So if I do a visibility hide, just the top stays, which is kind of weird. It should be the opposite, but you know, that's the way ZBrush works. So let's just smooth it out again, the same way. Oh, another thing, like I mentioned before, if your smooth is not enough, even if at 100% is not enough, you can always go to your light box and you can go to your brush and go to the smooth. Where is smooth? Right here. And then you have this smooth stronger here. This guy here really, you know, like does a fantastic job just like really smoothing things out. You actually have to be a little careful because it's super strong. Obviously, you can tweak like the intensity, right? So you can play with that, but it's definitely like a much stronger smooth than the usual. Just smooth it out. And then let's start doing some carving here. Now for the top ones, looking at the reference in there, I'm seeing some of them very deep around the middle, but I don't want one like right in the middle of the way I have, because I'm starting to break the symmetry. So what I might have to do here, I'm just gonna fill it up. And I'm gonna just carve it slightly in an offset so it's not so centered. So let's get this back here and start maybe around from here, and then bring it back to the middle area. Oops, I'm doing the reverse. Okay, right here. Z add. I like using Z add actually and press Alt. I kind of like my brain works better that way. If I switch to Z sub, sometimes I forget and I start doing the opposite. So with the Z add, I keep like constantly using Alt. I think I got used to that because I was sculpting some creature at some point at work, and then it was lots of negatives and positives, and then I kind of got used to, like, in my brain kind of like got stuck in that mode. So let's get this one much deeper around, maybe around here. And then I'm gonna get some of them a little bit more wobbly. like that. And then some around here, splitting. And again, like the in-betweens, we're gonna be covering with all that awesome, there's a little quinning in there. Let me just break it up a little bit. I don't want it to look too similar here. And then around here, we're gonna create those little pillows right around here. Dig a little deeper. Always starting the line very faint, right? Like a low pressure, and then digging deeper later. Cannot twin too much, so let's just incorporate some diagonals here. I don't like that one. Leave a little curvature. That. And then those definitely going to start around there, some of them. That's the fun part, you know, it's like it's mixing up the types of skin in different areas, you know, it's like it's how to create the blend that's actually convincing. That's the part that I actually like the best. Like when you get to an area like this one, like I figured out how the pore is actually going to be becoming wrinkles and vice versa. This is it's pretty cool. So now I have those ones blocked, just like we did before. So I'm going to pick some of them. I'm going to go much deeper. Maybe around there. This guy definitely deeper. There. And maybe around here. I should start a little deeper here. And then maybe around here. There. Some around here, deeper. And then some around, let's pick this guy here. At least it has a little bit more interest now, like it's more interesting. Now we can go to our favorite clay build-up. Let's just subdivide it a little bit because I want to see what I'm doing. Okay. Didn't have to go all the way up, but let's do this. Let's add some more intensity, maybe like 3. Gonna really start blocking out this little pillows. Again, always like when you sculpt in the form, right? Like you think about it, if you could touch it. Basically, like that's how I imagine, you know, it's like if I could touch it, how that would feel, you know? So basically, like if you have like, just like with a muscle, that you have the belly of the muscle, right? Like you have like the bigger form right in the middle. For those guys here as well, you know, it's like you start with the form a little bit shallower around here, and then it gets a belly, and then it gets a little flat again. We try to add some of that variation as well. So when I'm sculpting, I'm always thinking about those things, you know, it's like, okay, trying to sculpt as if I was feeling it with my hands. And then also, you know, it's like adding some of this variation in terms of where those bellies are. Especially around this area here, you're gonna have to actually build to look like there is a softness to it. Some of those like are so low res before that now they are a little fasted, right? But we're gonna be smoothing out and then re-sculpting with a thinner brush. That should go away very fast. There's a lot of complexity when it comes to lips, you know, it's like it all depends of obviously like the reference you're gonna be using, and sometimes it can be quite flat. The expression is gonna really influence the whole thing, right? Like if you have a smile, it's like a pretty wide smile, right? Like obviously a lot of those wrinkles simply gonna go away, especially like the lower lips. If you look like someone, or you can look yourself in the mirror. This is another reference that we all should be using more, right? It's like mirrors. You know, it's like, it's great. I don't have any in front of me. I broke the last one I had. It's, my face is too ugly, man. It's like they cannot resist. Yeah, it's like, if you look at your lower lips, if you do like a bigger smile, right? Like it goes completely flat. Everything that you had, like any wrinkles in there, go away. And then if you have very dry, chapped lips, probably like if you force a big smile like that, you're gonna see them cracking right in front of you and bleeding eventually. So it's an interesting structure because it's so thin. The skin is very thin. So now that we have these bigger forms in there, let's start with the smaller stuff. So we're gonna start combining things here. Let's bring some of the cool stuff from those pores in here because we have so many of them and they are not talking nicely with the neighbors just yet. So we're gonna go and bring some of them. I'm gonna start bringing them to the party here. And I can smooth it out a little bit so it's not too much. Eventually you can pick like a few of them, for example, around here. Connect some dots in there. And really create like some bigger wrinkles. All this stuff, like, it looks like it's nothing, you know, it's like sometimes like you might think like it's overkill, but again, like it's the kind of stuff that even unconsciously your eye kind of catches eventually, you know, it's like, and it starts like distinguishing the different types of skin, and it's an interesting effect, you know. It's like especially like with the once you have the subsurface scattering, all this stuff is going to start like really going away, right? It's going to be much more like subtle than what I'm sculpting here, but what's going to bring them back to life is basically the specular. So even if they are kind of like faded with the subsurface scattering, when you get like a light that hits them like straight on, the highlights definitely going to bring them back to life. So that's why it's so cool to have like renders done like with the glancing angles, so you can actually really reveal all the forms, right? Like it's so cool. You can actually, there's no way to hide them. And then there is the opposite as well, right? Like the intentionally hiding stuff by exaggerating something, for example, like the flashlight effect that I use. It helps to hide a lot of stuff. It adds realism as well, right? Because it's almost like you're adding an imperfection that's kind of like predictable, something that, you know, if you take a picture with the flash photography, you're gonna see that kind of flat, kind of, you know, the form is gonna go flat and everything. So it's almost like your brain switches and kind of believes, you know, like it's the same stuff with when you have something in print, right? Like with the chromatic aberration, and then you try to reproduce that in CG, and all of a sudden, like it looks like you're looking at something real that was printed, and your brain gets a little, you know, tricked by that. So it's the whole thing about like adding imperfection instead of removing imperfection, right? Like it's such an interesting thing because a photographer is looking for something to improve the imperfections, right? Like, so if there is an imperfection in the camera or the lens, for example, like there's some extreme chromatic aberration, the photographer is probably going to use like a Lightroom or some other software to eliminate the chromatic aberration completely. But then when you're a CG artist, we try to go like the opposite way, right? We're trying to introduce the imperfection because that make it look more realistic, because it's kind of like I said, like the brain's expecting that from a photography, right? Not from a render. So it kind of like your brain goes instantly like to, okay, it's a photograph, right? It's like, no, it's actually a render. It's easy to trick the brain for sure. Let's introduce some of the other directions here as well. So again,
just all add a lens flare.
Oh yeah, the lens flare, man. Lens flare and drop shadow. Yeah, I'm gonna add some of this micro stuff here, but again, like try not to go too overboard with it. Some of that, a little bit of the leathery kind of thing. But I cannot, definitely not go too crazy with it. It has to help instead of like overriding what I'm doing. just a tiny little bit. Let's add some of the vertical, the horizontal stuff as well. Although in the reference I'm seeing there, he doesn't have a ton. Still can add some here. So let's try. Oh, here I am doing sub again. Let's try. Cross them. Introducing like some secondary ones, just breaking up. Then bringing some of those ones as almost like if they are kind of starting to become those bigger ones. So they kind of start from the top, branch out. This one looks a little big in there. And then the final touch here that I didn't do in the bottom one is to actually use a little bit of the inflate. The inflate really adds to it. But first we're gonna have to actually introduce some more complexity here. Actually, like, you know, if we can break up something like that. And then introduce more of those guys. Yeah, this is definitely going to be a good blocking for me, and then really go to town with the detailing later. But yeah, in the spirit that I mentioned the other day, right? Like the important part is that you're productive, you know, it's like you don't stop the process, because if you stop the process, you get lazy. And then it's hard to wrap your head around where you stopped, you know. So if there's anything you can do, even if you're like completely exhausted, like you pick the simplest possible thing, but just so you're active in that project, so you don't let it die, you know. Otherwise, you completely lose focus. Another thing you can do as well, even if you're not using the texturing XYZ, it's still a really awesome resource, right, for reference and stuff. So I would say, like for this class here, I would rather if you guys didn't use texturing XYZ, so that way you can actually practice your skills, you know, develop some skills when it comes to the hand sculpting stuff. But then obviously for your, you know, for your project, if you want to finish it up and just use texturing XYZ, it's an excellent product, you know. It's like, and Jeremy is a very cool guy as well. So by all means, like support their awesome work. And he's always introducing new stuff and everything. But yeah, I would rather like if you could at least like exercise pretty good before you get too much into it. But like I said before, like even if you're not using it as a reference, is very cool. They have lots of renders you can find online. You know, it's like you can find, for example, like just like gray shaded stuff showing the texture itself in detail. So it's pretty cool to just look at it. You know, it's like, okay, what the actual scan is showing me here, like how, you know, those lips are in real life, right? Because like I said, my stuff is mostly idealized. But, you know, although I'm using some reference here, like there's a lot of very deliberate stuff, right, that I'm adding here. Mostly deliberate. Yeah, Jeremy was always very generous. I mean, like when he was first starting his company, he contacted me and he gave me like some of his packs to try. And I was like, man, that's pretty awesome stuff, you know. But then I got like, it was right around the time that I was like getting more and more into doing stuff manually instead of like, you know, but definitely like for to use like professionally. And I believe ILM got some of that. You know, it's like actually every single company out there is using his stuff these days. It's pretty amazing stuff. You know, it's like he really saves a ton of time. Oh shoot! Here comes ZBrush again, shooting against across the ball. Yeah, so now I have some of that in there. It looks a little bit rough. What I can do as well, I can actually use my move brush and I can actually just like wobble this stuff a little bit. So I'm gonna start like introducing some irregular stuff, like just like adding more curves and things like that so it doesn't look too straight. It's hard to do that like straight away with your gesture, right? But afterwards you can actually do that and just like bring some of those forms to read a little bit more irregular like that. Just gonna bring stuff side to side. And now the final touch here is gonna be our little inflate, right? So that's another reason, like, you know, why not use the pinch, right? The inflate's gonna actually help to introduce some of the organic feel to it. So let's do inflate. Again, the intensity is gonna be very low. Instead of like being right at the highest resolution, let me go back maybe like once or twice around here, like 1, 2, maybe around here is good. And I carefully are gonna start building, inflating this stuff, and it's gonna get tighter. Very carefully, right? Like I'm kind of like doing like kind of like in a controlled way, but then I definitely gonna check the back side and see if this is not like a mess. If it is a little messy, it doesn't, you know, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just like if the intersections become like too big, then you might get like into big trouble. But around here, it looks pretty good. That one looks a little sharp. We're gonna just, oops, the smooth is pretty strong now. So I'm gonna just smooth just a tiny bit. There you go. And this one looks good. This one looks good. Yeah, looks like it's in a good spot. So now if I switch back to my highest, should be good. And then I can introduce a little bit more of my random brush. Where is it? Random right here. Just so it has a little bit of a texture in it. But it definitely, like, this is like far from what I want to do. It's just to have something in there. And then even around here, for example, if I look at this area here, which is basically like, you see like I have this little depth in there, right? So it's almost like I have to treat it as two different parts of the surface. So I can build this ones up to this spot right here. And then I can start again, almost like as a secondary set of forms, using a little bit right there. The thing is, like a portrait, like at first glance, right? It's just like, it's okay, it's just a face. But it's just a face that you can make as complex or more complex than the entire body if you want to, right? Because there's so much stuff to look at. Again, like it's just a matter of like where you want to stop. Because I mean, like I can see, for example, lips like this as an entire project can be as complex as sculpting an arm, for example, if I want to take that way, right? I can just like keep working on this like for days, and I can get like in a very, very cool, super real stuff. But then, is it worth it, right? Like I mean, like in the scope of the entire portrait you have to deal with, and in my case, I have a month to deal with it. I have to pick my battles, right? But definitely, like it's always a matter of like how far you want to push things. If you have the time, man, you can really go to town. You can make something that definitely looks better than a scan if you wanna go to town with stuff, you know. But make sure that you have the time to do that, because yeah, it's hard.
Chris, which material are you using?
Oh, this one here? It's a modified, if you pick up this, the basic material, it's like you pick the basic material and just tweak. You go to material, and then if you go to the modifiers, you can just tweak here. You know, it's like I normally add more specularity to it. I tweaked my spec curve as well, so I have more spec. The diffuse is at all the way to 100 right now. The ambient, I think I increased a little bit as well. It's just a matter of like tweaking that material. It's the material I always use because it's very predictable as well. You know, it's like it doesn't have like any wax feel to it or anything. It's just like pure. You can get like a very blend kind of look to it, which is basically what I did here. So for example, if I go to material and you just like tweak this, the specular curve in here, right? The intensity. Let's see. Oh, it's actually, did I bake it? I think this one is baked. Oh shit. Yeah, it's baked, but let's try. I don't know if it's probably gonna do just like in this spot here. I hope I don't mess things up, but let's try with the material and then just say color and then fill object. Okay, so now let's switch to material again, to basic material, and then let's see if that works now. Yeah, so the spec, you see, like I get to a very blend kind of material if I exaggerate it. But by default, I think the curve is a little bit more like this. So you can actually really see how far you want to go with it. You can definitely reproduce like a very similar feel to the blend shader in Maya, you know, if you want to.
Cool. And this golden effect is because of a color that you assigned to?
The color, I believe it is. I believe it is because let's see. Do I have color? Yeah, that's the color. There's a color baked in there, some, you know, poly painted.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like you can turn it off and then just like pick anything here and just color it this way as well, which is favorable, right? Like if you don't have any color going on. But yeah. And then so let's unhide the other set of lips in here. Let's see what we got today. We got like some pruny lips in there. Not a lot of detail in terms of like the other breakups, the in-betweens and everything. But it's a good starting point, and it definitely looks a little dry and pruny. So that's that was the main intention. So that's kind of like we kind of achieved, but definitely I have to go much further with that. The other thing is to always like observe, for example, create like pressure in different areas, right? For example, if I know that the lips are compressing around there, I can actually add, oops, I'm painting. Oh, that would be bad. So I can actually paint some of the compression in here. So basically like I'm gonna paint this thinking about like, okay, this is compressing against the bottom lips now and vice versa. So those ones I can actually paint to look like there's a little compression. So in this case here, obviously like he's gonna have like his lips pretty much sealed. But if you're sculpting a smile or something like that, then obviously you're gonna have to consider only the parts where you're actually getting some compression, right? For example, in the corner here, I'm building up some of that compression around here as well. And then here I can actually add some of that kind of like brain kind of little structures in there. And then go back here, also build some really in the contact. And try to, like I said before, I mean, like if there is a belly, right? Like where the compression is, you're probably gonna start like fading it as you get, you know, further. So you can actually read that little belly like this, you know. It's like you sculpt where the compression is and then let the rest kind of normal. So around here, I can actually sculpt more of like a horizontal line. Very much where that is. And then I can build up the bottom as well. And like I said yesterday, when I was painting or showing the specular map, around this connection point here, where the lips are meeting, I normally add a little bit more specularity, so it gets a little wider in there, because I wanted to read like there's some wetness going on in the contact. But then obviously you can, if you really want to go to town, like, and add more realism, you can even create like some micro bubbles, you know. The best way to create like micro bubbles for like gums and stuff like that I found with ZBrush is to actually use the Z-spheres with the Z-sketch. So let's try. I can just show like very quickly here how I normally approach it, but I want to make sure that I have this model saved first. So let me do a little quick saving here. Not so quick, right? Because now we are HD, so the saving takes a little bit, but let's do a saving. And yeah, those micro bubbles are very cool, man. Like for areas like the gums and the teeth. So like right in between, you get those tiny micro bubbles, and it's basically like they are useful just to catch up the reflections and the specular. So like they're very subtle, you know. It's like sometimes you add them to it, and you see them very clearly when you have like the model itself in there. You can see like all those bubbles in there, and it looks kind of overwhelming. I was like, oh man, maybe I added too much. But then you render and they're completely transparent, and they just work as like specular catchers. They just catch the speck, and then they look very nice. You know, it's like you get those tiny details in there, which is very cool. Especially like if you're using stuff like you know, it's like a depth of field, right? Like all of a sudden that speck becomes just a tiny little blur in there, and it's just a little extra level of stuff. So for example, like if I have my model here, what you can do, you can actually incorporate, let's see if I remember how to do it. You can just do the append and just get the Z-sphere in here, right? So you have your Z-sphere in there, and then you have this little guy right here. So I'm gonna make sure that they're both visible. So I have the sphere and the model itself. And then I already have Z-sketch in there, right? Current sketch, which is basically the default. So now the sketch is gonna respect whatever I'm sculpting here. So for example, if I do a sketch around, let's say, actually I have to switch it here. So let's go to, let's see, Z-sketch, right? And you can just say like edit sketch, like this. So now if you click that and you have your Z-sphere selected with whatever model you have visible in there, if you do any sketching here, it creates this effect, right? It's going to sculpt the surface of the model like that. But then you can use, for example, let's say if we can make maybe like this average here a little bit less than that. Oh, not like this. What did I do now? Did I switch it? Let's see, sketch, where is it? Right here. See sketch. So let's try with the tiny little bubbles right where you want to do it, around right there. Let's see. Just add some of those guys in here. So what happens is that once you use a smooth, it kind of blends them back. So basically like you sculpt with them. So for example, like if you have something around here, right? And if you use the smooth, it kind of blends them into those little dots, you know, kind of like this. So it's very useful, you know. It's like sometimes you can just add right there, just a feel like that. And then you can smooth it out and just get like the liquid in there, right? So you're gonna get this little tiny little puddles. You can use this for multiple stuff. I mostly use for teeth, but I can actually try to use in here and see how it works out. And then obviously, like just by doing that doesn't do the whole trick, right? Because you have to create the adaptive skin now. So we can actually go to your adaptive, actually unified skin. You can do a preview. So that's what's causing it. It's creating like a very broad version of it, right? Let's increase the resolution and see it. So now with increased resolution, I get more detail. Let's see, around 700. It's uncheck and uncheck again. So I got them pretty much like a good shape. It's a little bit bigger than what I wanted. You can keep increasing the resolution if you want. And let's say at 1024. So yeah, it's like 14,000 polys, which shouldn't be too bad. And then you can simply export this now as a unified skin. Let's click make unified skin in here. So let's see. Yes, create polymesh 3D. So now we have a different subtool in here around there. So basically, actually it's right here. So it's baked in another subtool. So I'm gonna just delete this one, the Z-sphere. And then I can actually switch back to this guy and then append whatever is the new one that we just created. This one here, skin Z-sphere. So now I have my little puddle in there. And we can, actually I can just render to show you, you know, it's like not right now, but I mean, I can render tonight and just show you like this kind of stuff, you know. But for the teeth, it's very cool. You can just go around the gums, right where the gums and the teeth connect. And you can just like do little sketches in there. And it really helps, you know, it's like to catch a little highlight in there. So at this point, let's see, we have, it's 11:20. I was thinking about exporting this displacement and testing it, but it's gonna take 13 minutes just to do that. So let's keep sculpting, I guess, like in some areas here. So we can actually use this time to show more stuff. So this area is the one I just started, right? Like the top lid in there, but I didn't go too far with it. So let's use that magic brush that's our random brush, skin random. I can actually use this one in symmetry right now, because it's kind of like just gonna use to blend this stuff together. Intensity at 10.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
The thing you just showed with the Z-sphere, is it also, can you also use that to do like the tears?
The tears?
Like the liquid along the eye line, or?
I actually use a very controlled version of it for it. You know, it's like I have an actual geometry for it, which is just like a very simple, kind of like a curved, like half pipe. Because as you can tell here, you know, it's like it's a simple geometry. It normally goes all the way around. I normally use just in the bottom because that's where you see it. But in reality, this is going to happen all the way across, including the top part. But I don't use it with these spheres. I definitely create like a very well-controlled mesh, which is basically like it's just an edge that touches the eyelid. The other edge touches the eyeball itself. And then there's a third edge right in the middle that I basically I create a little 90-degree kind of wall like this. And then with the subdivision, it creates this perfectly smooth like transition, kind of like a half pipe or a mini ramp for a skateboard. And then I just add some either displacement or bump just to break up it to create this kind of like a wobbleness to the reflection. And that's about it, you know. But so I would
do that in Maya then.
Yeah, all in Maya. But then I would say, like, if you want to include, for example, like little specks of stuff, I mean, like, it looks like he has a little bit of a little, you know, looks like a little dot of water or something. Maybe you can introduce that, you know, it's like in some other areas. This one definitely looks like something like it's a liquid booger in there or something like that. Yeah, I think it's interesting to test, you know. But yeah, definitely this one is going to be just a very simple object. And it's going to work just like this one here. It's going to work just the same.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. It's very, I love like discovering stuff, you know, it's like every new class we are kind of like exploring stuff together, and then sometimes I figure out things slightly different. And it definitely, like in terms of perception, it keeps, it gets better, you know, it's like as you observe more pictures, obviously. It's always that thing about like increasing your visual vocabulary, right? So if you look at more references, eventually some of them are going to stick to your mind, and then next time you sculpt something, that's going to come back, and then you're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. But it's the kind of stuff, you know, it's like if you're doing this constantly, it's going to stick. But if you just do eventually, you're going to end up like forgetting a lot of stuff, you know. So that's why it's important to keep going with the practicing. So now I have this area of transition that's not working just yet because I have the pores and all this stuff in there. So what I can do go slow, like a lower resolution, not resolution, intensity for my pores. So I went from 40 to like, let's say 28. And then I can keep digging some of those. It's doing in symmetry, but I don't think the symmetry is gonna work at this point because I already broke up the whole thing. But just some of them just starting to get a little bit more spread out. So instead of like going like that constant kind of like dot, 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 I'm gonna just like start like spreading out. So some of them are gonna start disappearing and fading away. And especially around this area here, I'm gonna do some of them in here, and then they're gonna start kind of disappearing around here. So we're gonna start making them more spread out until they eventually go away. And then here, I'm gonna obviously keep going a little bit further with them. Probably those ones are gonna have to blend. I don't think this area here gonna have a lot of them, so I'm gonna blend back. But around here, I'm gonna start doing the same thing. I already have a lower intensity, and I'm gonna start like spreading them out. So instead of like drawing one side by side, I just keep the distance a little bit more increased until they kind of fade. Combination of distance and lower intensity, basically. Same around here. And just remember, like you can use the standard brush to your advantage because it definitely destroys the underlying structures when you go over the same stuff many, many times, right? But you can use that to your advantage. For example, you can set up like a standard brush and just like add some alpha in there that at the same time adds some textures and then removes whatever is underneath. So you can actually use that as a eraser and a blender at the same time. Well, so many different ways to do stuff. That's why I love ZBrush, you know, it's just, it's not like a linear workflow. It's like you can do the same stuff many, many different ways and just be creative about it. I think that's the whole philosophy that Ofer has. Just like, you know, give freedom to people to create their stuff. Now, those guys here I can actually break up in different directions, right? Because right now it's quite boring the way everything is going the same way. So we're just gonna create some crisscrossing here. Like really break up those guys. Sometimes you can come like in a totally different direction just to create like that crisscrossing, very crisscrossing. Yeah, so let's see that. And then definitely like some of them are looking a little bit too parallel. So let me just break them up. A bit more of a diagonal line like that. And definitely like those wrinkles, the major ones, I have to dig deeper to help them out. So yeah, today was good because it was a long session of sculpting, which is always good, I think. You know, it's like sometimes you guys get a little, you know, it's like, so how do I approach that area, you know? We still have to do some work in the forehead, right? Like, I told you guys are gonna have to actually introduce some more lines going horizontally. And there's a lot of vertical ones as well. So for example, like you can go across, creating lines, creating some kind of stretching, going all the way up like that, always looking for those little dots to connect, right? But then obviously those guys here, I'm gonna get like the bigger major wrinkles. Also with some breakup, changing direction. And then I can actually use those ones to create those major wrinkles, right? But then I can do a lot when it comes to the micro stuff. So I can do, for example, I can just go to a higher intensity and a much smaller brush. And then I can create like tiny little lines connecting those guys like this. And I can cover this entire area here with this. Or I can create some brush as well that can help me to do multiple of them at the same time, you know. But the whole thing here is about like creating this little impression that the skin gets a little thinner and more stretched. So it's like a combination of having the pores themselves and then this little lines, you know, it's like cutting across. And then you can incorporate some of them as well, like, you know, it's like basically like as a tree here, right? So kind of like they break from the major wrinkles into something smaller. And again, like you get the vertical ones, they're probably gonna cut across some of those. So again, like there's so much room for covering stuff, you know, with detail if you want to go that route. But it's really, really up to you guys how far you're pushing your projects, you know. It's way too many possibilities when you have this much resolution, you know. So you see, like those ones, they're not working quite well yet. I don't have like a, you know, it's like I could use a little bit of inflate maybe in there, or I could simply go to the lowest res within the HD, or maybe one subdivision level more, like this. And then very carefully with my clay buildup, just like build some of that edge up again. Should do some of the compression. Obviously, like it's gonna be smoothing out some of the pores, but at this resolution here, it shouldn't be too bad. You know, it's like even if you lose a little bit of the depth of them, it should be okay, as long as you're not going too crazy with pressure. Now, if I go a subdivision level less in here, then I can actually really exaggerate this in between bigger major folds in here. Let's do that. Let's exaggerate a little bit, get some of those thick surfaces in there. Even around here, can build up around this wrinkle, and then around this one here as well. You see, like I'm playing with secondary forms right after I was playing with tertiary forms, right? How can you do that with clay, right? You can't. But CG, man, we have a lot of flexibility. You can go from secondary to primary, tertiary to primary, in any order you want. You know, it's like you can do that as long as you're going to the subdivision levels. You know, it's like in being careful about how you manipulate the surface. You can get a lot of stuff incorporated. Some more form in there just to get it a little bit more puffy. So it adds a little bit more pressure to it. And then maybe build up some of that one as well, kind of like a secondary one. You know, when you have like an angry kind of expression, right? Like normally what happens in here is that those wrinkles that come from the side in there, what they do, they come into a shape like this, right? So you get like those major lines like that. They kind of come from the sides like this. And they build up like really strongly around there. So you kind of like can build them up. That's basically like when you have like a snarl combined with, you know, with a brow down or something like that, a bunch of different shapes. But it's interesting because those ones I'm sculpting here, they're kind of like indicating that kind of facial expression, but just like keeping them very little, right? Like not too strong right now. But you can tell that if he forces his, you know, his facial expression in there, you're definitely gonna get something crazy like that. Starting to add like a little bit of the bigger forms in here because I had all these tiny ones in there. Just gonna add some of that bigger stuff. And then, yeah, it's like very slowly, you know, it's like you start building more interesting forms, and they all have to play together, right? Like if it's just the tertiary forms, that are working and everything else is sucky, you know, it's not going to work at the end, because at the end, when you're rendering this with the actual physical lights or like an HDRI or something like that, if it's off, it's going to look off. You know, there's no way to fix it just by adding more detail. So make sure you check like at all times, like go back and forth between primary, secondary, tertiary, and then make sure that they're all playing nice together. Another thing I forgot to mention this. Let's go outside of the HD here first. And so if I want to do some kind of like add more irregular stuff to the skin, like almost like playing with the secondary forms, what I did here to introduce like stuff like this and the zygomatic bone here, some of those cuts. I normally use the same carve brush, but then I go to the intensity, I go to very low, for example, at 4, right? And then I can go a resolution lower like this. For example, this one is at 277,000. So basically like a subdivision 1, then 2. I'm using between 2 and 3. And then with that brush at 4, now if I sculpt here, you're gonna notice like, see, like I have to do multiple passes to get that wrinkle in there, right? But if I do even at 3, something like that. Now, if I want to stylize, for example, and add like a sharp crease in here, if I do multiple times, you're going to see it happening there, right? But if I do just one time with a bigger brush like that, you barely see it, right? But it's there. I just introduced a little bit of a line in there. And then you can do that for those bigger forms as well. So for example, like this area here, I can actually introduce a little bit more depth in here, and here. You can barely see it, but I'm introducing some secondary stuff around the, you know, the masseter here, around the other one. So just like, again, I'm playing with the secondary forms now, way after I already started doing like all the tertiary stuff, right? Just by going back to the non-HD model and then introducing some of those bigger forms. So very, very flexible. Like it's really a matter of like how you're gonna use it, but it's totally available to you. Just to add some asymmetry to this nose here. Is like maybe I can actually crook it to the side a little bit. And then eventually the tip I'm gonna bring to the other side. It's a very slight crook. And then later we're gonna be doing more stuff with it. Yep. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. We have the reviews again that are gonna be happening after tomorrow. So you have another 2 days to poke around with your models. Not 2 days, right? You have probably like I said, probably like 30 hours from now. Let's say midnight. That's gonna be 24 hours. Yeah, you have about 30 hours from now actually to drop stuff in the folder. And then it can be anything. If it's something that you just started, I don't mind looking. As long as you want me to see stuff, you know, it's like you just put it in there, and then I'm gonna do my best like to comment on anything. If it's likeness, I'm gonna be commenting likeness. If it's like poor distance or whatever, you know, it's like anything you have in there, I'm gonna do my best. And normally, like if you watch the previous pre-recorded review sessions, some of them go for hours, right? Because I don't speed things up. I want to make sure that you guys get the feedback you're looking for. So I try to be careful about like, you know, it's like, okay, let's do as many like paint overs or whatever I need to do for you to get the idea, you know, so make sure that everything is clear. So thank you so much, guys. And I see you guys on Saturday, either in the morning or at night. And basically, like if you're here in the morning, I'm going to be reviewing your stuff. And then if you're not here in the morning, then your stuff is going to be automatically transferred to night, even if you're online or not. If your work is in the folder, I'm going to be reviewing anyway. So thank you so much, and I see you soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Chris.
Well, I'm gonna pop my sternum. Check this out. Oh, do you hear that? Jesus. Oh man. Yeah, I never met anyone who can pop this sternum, but sometimes I get this pain here. I was like, okay, he's about to pop. So I'm like, cack. Yeah. Old people, man.
So weird.
See you guys.
Yeah, you need to check that, man.